Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Friday Club 2022-2023 academic year. I am Dominic Moon, Senior Education Consultant at Metropolis Education, and I'm your guest host still. So a big thank you to the team at the Friday Club for asking me to be involved once again. Now, I am really excited with today's guest as we can continue to talk to some of the industry's experts, figureheads and worker bees, giving them a voice on a whole heap of subjects. My second guest is most certainly an industry expert and always has something interesting to say. That's my experience pretty much on any subject. So I am delighted to welcome Dragana Hartley, Director of External Relations at Cheltenham Ladies College. Hello, Dragana.
No, Dominic, that was a very lovely introduction. I have to say I had myself down as worker bee rather than expert, but there you go.
Well, let's give everybody else a little taste of who you are and where you've come from. So, having left Cheltenham Ladies College yourself, you went on to study law, but abandoned that, and much to the cue of the parental heart attack, realizing that you weren't designed to be a lawyer, and at the tender age of 27 went to work in the advertising game. This is not my words, everybody, but in those days it was considered to be the most fun you could have with your clothes on. So working in advertising in its glory years with all the big name clients, big budgets, exceptional creativity. She was promoted to the board of Young and Rubicam in London in her early 30s. There, she learned about running a business, the impact of making good and bad decisions, how hard good leadership can be to achieve, and that a lot of your career can simply be put down to luck. She had the corner office, the sofa, and the highly prized fridge. 2 kids, a husband with a role that required regular travel meant something had to give, so she upped sticks and went to the gorgeous Cotswolds at the end of the 1990s. And that's when she came back into contact with Cheltenham Ladies. Her daughter became a pupil, and she was later invited to be a governor, and since 2014, the Director of Marketing and Communications, which morphed into Director of External Relations a couple of years ago. We'll talk about that in a second. She manages a stellar team, of course, who jointly with admissions keep college full of pupils who will thrive there wherever they come from. Interestingly, although it doesn't look like it, this will be her 4th recession in employment as and when it comes. Dragana, we're here. Thank you very much. This is going to be a laugh. Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay, well, let's hold tight and jump straight in. Right. So this is going to be your 4th recession in employment. So let's start with that. Okay. This is a bit buzzy word for us, but many schools drone on about being a business, as they should, and being more professional. As part of that journey, you have to understand your own business, I suspect. So here is my question. How much research do you do? Is it enough? How much value do you place on it? And does it have to help to craft strategy? And how often? There's some questions in there, quite a few, sorry about that. But okay. Talk to me, please, and talk to our listeners.
Well, I think, you know, if you have customers, you've got to ask yourself, how do you really know who they are? What they want from your product, why they like it, why they reject it, how they'd like it to change, all those things. And I think this is not about whether we class ourselves as industry experts, or we've been here for a long time. This is not about our opinions and our thoughts about who our customer is. It's actually making a connection with your customers by allowing them to tell you who they are and what they want. And that, for me, is the basis on which we approach, you know, all research. And out of that, I think, you know, research is pointless unless you've got actionable insights, because there are times when we pat ourselves on the back and we went, well done, they like this, it's big tick. We've done it. You put it in a box and you leave it there until 5 years later you go, it's time for another one. So, you know, we use professionals because they tend to be really good at pulling out the actionable insights. And sometimes all of us find that difficult. You know, you kind of go, what are they really saying? What do they, you know, so what does that mean for us? So those conversations, you know, when you get the presentation, you go, okay, that's interesting, but what does it actually mean? Number one. And number two, what does it mean for us? So we do qualitative and quantitative research every 5 years. And that's something that I formalized. It was one of my objectives given to me. You know, we've done lots of ad hoc stuff. Most of it's been done in-house. You know, we'll ask a few parents to come in and we'll have a nice cup of tea, and you know, and we hope they'll tell us the truth, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. So so that was, as I say, one of my objectives. So every 5 years we've just completed our second qualitative research, and we're going to start the quantitative arm of that later on in the autumn term. And really it's so that we can benchmark our progress in the areas that we have agreed as a school are strategically important to us, and that will be different for all schools, really. And out of that, we've also developed a customer segmentation. It's not massively sophisticated, and it doesn't have 15 different typologies in it. It's just that, you know, largely there are parents who choose independent education for the outcomes. You know, are they going to get the right exams at the right level to get them to wherever it is they want to go next? And that is paramount. And therefore, you know, you've got to talk to those people and show them things that validate that choice. And there are those who are more interested in, my child is developing as a young human being and I want them to have the best experience that works for them. And by the way, they are going to get a good education, but actually it's the person that comes out. Now, those are not binary either. There's fuzzy bits in the middle. But when you're looking at your messaging then throughout the year, you kind of say, okay, do we give equal weight to these things? Let's make sure we're not just focusing all the time on the academics. We've got to talk about this. So for my team, we really use it as, okay, what are we deciding the messages are going to be for the next 6 months, 8 months, whatever that is. Okay.
So who gets to see the research? Who do you not want to see the research at fear of things falling apart? So who has access? I mean, you commission it, right, I guess?
Yep, I commission it. I work with the research company. We agree the questions that we're going to do. And in our case now, because we did it together for, well, actually it was, COVID got in the way. So actually it turned out to be nearly 7 years. But we said, these are the areas that are still important. Therefore, we've got to keep asking this question. They're going to this a different audience because 7 years has gone by, but the questions are still valid. And it also then helps with the benchmarking, even in a qualitative sense. You know, you get a sense of when you're talking to them in person. You know, the researcher said to me, last time I felt we had more of this kind of a person. That kind of a person isn't in your cohort anymore. And we decided that that was an age thing. Okay. That actually the traditional parent who probably is older is not really representative in our cohort as much as it was. And these were all, it was a randomized sample. It was, here's the parents, you know, blank names, just pull out however many you want. We contacted everybody and said, you may be called. So if you contact parents, then you have an obligation to tell them what the outcome is. Okay. So we are in the process of rolling out that. So it starts with governors and leadership team. Yeah. It then goes to all staff who are interested in turning up to hear a presentation. Yeah. And a précis will go to parents to say, you know, some of you participated, thank you very much. But for everybody else, here's what we found.
That seems really bold. I don't know why in my head, it seems really bold and grown up to do that. Is that
my answer to that was, why would you be anything other than bold and grown up? I mean, you know, I mean, I suppose because of my background, we've always done research, and you can have a whole other discussion about how advertising research has killed creativity. And it was happening in my time, and it's still going on. You know, I have sat in meetings where we've done a post viewing. So, you know, you've had a campaign and you get the post campaign report done by an enormous group like Nielsen, you know, and they will sit there and go, well, about 4 people looked at it and they thought it was shit. Excuse my language. And you have to, you have to be able to sit there and go, okay, well, it's not the answer we expected, but what are we going to do about it? Because this is your client's money, and to a certain extent, we are spending other people's money, and we are a charity, and you have a responsibility not to hide things, but to face them head on.
Yeah. And how close is that dotted line between the research, the result of the research of who, what, why, where, how, all the rest of it, to then the next strategy those lovely strategy documents that you write every year and go and pitch? How close are those joined up? Do you use that data? Does it feed directly back in?
Absolutely. Like anything you do, you go through the ISC census report, you do your benchmarking cut, which actually we've just, started to look at in depth, girls only schools of X size. And you say, okay, where do we sit? Cheltenham Ladies College versus the benchmark versus ISC census. And you'll find a lot of interesting stuff in there. Now, sometimes, as somebody did say to me the other day, well, what are we going to do with all this? Really good question. I mean, and it is about saying, when we are developing our strategy for the next, 4 years, if you can even think that far ahead, because then the unknown unknowns that you're currently dealing with are staggering and probably greater than any of us who've ever worked have experienced. You've got to be able to say, these are the things that I do know with a certain amount of confidence, and they have to be reflected in what we're going to do.
Yeah. Is there a sense of, be careful what you wish for? Because if you turn around and everybody says, we don't believe A levels are right, and then you kind of have to, as if through the research, I guess if somebody says that, then you have to move towards that, right?
Well, I think it depends. That's where, for example, if I mean, nobody has said that so far. That's a journalistic, clickbait headline. Not to insult you, but and I think if you believe that, and it's there in enough numbers, because that's the point. Everybody has an opinion, and now in this day and age, everybody has the ability to tell you what that is, and that's fine. But nobody changes business strategy based on one customer's opinion. What you have to know is, and that's where knowing who your people are is incredibly important, because we have people who say these things, and you turn around and you go, actually, what you think is so at odds with what we are that you're not a customer.
Yeah, interesting. So writing a strategy document, and you have your data done every 5 years or so.
Yeah.
How far realistically should our marketing and missions people out there writing these documents be looking? You said 4 years. I mean, God, really? 3 years? Oh my goodness, still.
I know. I mean, in the older days, you'd have clients who wrote 10, 20-year strategies. And it made sense, actually, because the rate of innovation, the rate of change, etc., was simply not what it is now. And so an awful lot of those kind of, marketing certainties have been blown up.
Yeah.
So, I sometimes look and somebody says, oh, let's do a 10-year strategy. I'll go, what? Why are we wasting our breath on that? It might make us feel good. And in a perfect world, sometimes it is good to say, if all things were like this, this is what we'd look like. And therefore that makes you feel nice. And sometimes actually you have to do that to make yourself wake up in the morning. But the reality is 3 years max.
3 years max. You plan early, you plan twice, I think the Royal Marines say, something like that. Is that a kind of...
Yeah. And actually my absolute, favorite saying about strategy was from the, late great David Ogilvy, which is, strategy is sacrifice.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because you can't do everything.
And I think she still missed that corner office in that fridge, everybody.
I do. Can I say no fridge in this school, obviously?
If it is, it's in the common room and you're not allowed to go near it.
Not like that.
Okay, right. So we can't get away from the COVID impacts on schools, and a lot of people are scarred and battle weary. Some have come out really well. From your perspective, what has stayed? What has gone? Where have the improvements come? Because it's been quite a good, in some cases, good exercise for many schools.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has, because it has, I mean, what I would say is that I can't believe that anybody isn't exhausted by this. And, you know, if you run a big boarding school, where in some cases in that first year, you know, we had children who couldn't go home and had guardians, but, you know, you still have a duty of care because they are actually under your watch, even though all of those things. So there was a sense when it looked as if, you know, COVID was beginning to fade, that we all went, oh, okay, thank God for that, you know. And then suddenly you're faced with this cataclysm that's basically just behind you. So I think the first thing to acknowledge is, you know, people are exhausted and maybe lacking in ideas and energy. But as with everything, if you choose to be optimistic and say, what did we learn about ourselves? Well, we learned that we are incredibly adept and fleet of foot, that we turned things round quickly, that when you work together in an open way with all colleagues and break down any kind of silo, anything is possible. And I think that, I would say, is probably also the longer lasting lesson that we have learnt from each other, is how to be supportive, how to ask for support without feeling that it's a sign of weakness. We know how connected we've become. For example, the groups that you've been running at Metropolis. I mean, you know, we're well in our second, third year. I mean, you know, we've been together for a lot, and how incredibly enlightening. I mean, I feel it, you know, it was, because I don't get out that much to things that other people did. So there are people that I had heard of but didn't know. And suddenly you look and think, wow, you know, we're all dealing with the same really difficult things. And, you know, nobody's breaching confidences. Nobody's doing any kind of cartel like, you know, what are your... But just to be able to say, I am struggling with this, is anybody else? Yeah. Is something that I don't think many of us have been able to do. So I don't think that will go away. I think that interconnectedness that we have forged will stay. We've got things like, you know, masks for some pupils are still here. There are, you know, still signs everywhere. Wash your hands, you know, catch it, bin it, kill it, because actually, why wouldn't you? Yeah. You know, in a boarding school environment, I mean, you know, norovirus is coming down the pipeline anytime.
Bring it on.
You know, so you know, I think that we learnt that that being there was not always necessary, that actually the whole hybrid, you know, how do you present yourself when you can only do it online, which people would have thought was an absolute impossibility, and that leads on to the other things we're going to talk about, prospectuses and things. What we've seen is that we can do it, and everybody now has some kind of online tour or whatever, and we still get a huge number of hits on our online tour, because what it does allow a parent to do is almost have a pre-experienced experience that was simply not available to them. And if you're busy and you've got a list and you want to cross a few off, then your first feeling for that can be, well, let's get a sense of it. And if it comes across, and if it's well done, and if it's authentic to you, that should result in a visit.
Do you think by having these digital enhancements, that you get rid of the tire kickers, as we call them?
Yeah, I mean, you know, everybody has them, but I think we possibly, because of who we are, where we are, the lovely, you know, I've got the lovely garden behind me, who wouldn't want a quick nosy around that?
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing is, you know, there is that sense that, oh, well, you can convert a tire kicker. Well, you might be able to, but there's also an awful lot of wastage in that. And that's one of my personal bugbears. It's why I'm very skeptical about magazines that can't tell me numbers and readerships and things, because wastage is waste.
Yeah, I'm
Whether
with you.
Whether it's money or whether it's people or energy, it's waste.
Okay, so you've sort of given our listeners a slight interest into what I one of the key areas I want to talk about, and I touched on it last week with another guest, but it's this. I'm an old ex-publisher. I'm a publisher myself, so it's the old the print, but the can of worms question. As we get older and our audience gets younger, are we in a position where we can make a decision on this? But do we need printed prospectuses? Do you still have one? Do you do newsletters, the glossy annuals, all that kind of stuff? Or is it time now to say enough is enough? Come on.
Yeah. Well, from a sustainability and environmental perspective, which actually I cannot stress how important that is now to college. I mean, it comes directly from Eve, the principal, who is passionate about that, because she spends every day with these young people who are going to inherit this mess, some of it, unless things start to change very rapidly. So in that sense of walking the walk and talking the talk, a couple of years ago we looked at everything and said, first of all, is this all being printed on sustainable stock? Is it being printed with inks that we can trace and so, and that then those questions began to run through everything we do. What are our suppliers doing to negate their carbon footprint? So that's now part of a bigger piece. But in the terms of the area that I look after, we just said, what can you see on a prospectus that you can't find on the website? Mm-hmm. And the answer is, well, nothing, because actually it's all there. And I just remember I had my sort of epiphany standing at Battersea probably about 5 years ago, when we decided to put everything on a memory stick. I mean, we did it quite early on, when people still had a little place in their computer for a memory stick.
Yeah, that's
gone, by the way, just to let everybody. We're all looking on mobiles. There isn't a thing for you to stick. So, but then there was, and I just remember seeing this woman who had been given, a glossy bag by everybody, and she'd put everything in there. And we were at the back of the hall. And she actually, she'd stopped by, but she was making a beeline for us because she wanted to talk to us. And we had the nice conversation, and then she kind of looked around and she said, well, I better take something with me because I'm trying to. And I just took this teeny tiny little thing and I said, everything's on that. And she went, oh my God, I could kiss you. And she kind of put it in her pocket as opposed to in all the bags. And I thought, she's going to get home, she's going to put her hand in her pocket and she'll bring it out. Mm. And that will be the first thing she's going to look at. Because then it was quite new. And then, you're killing the environment. You're making people look like pack horses every time they go to a thing. And when they get home, much as we would all love to think they get there and spread it out on the kitchen table, they put it in a pile next to the magazines and the Gardener's World that they've got a subscription to and all the other things. And if they haven't read it within the first 2 weeks, it's the recycling comes around and they go, oh God, that looks a mess. Bang.
Right, there you go, boys and girls. Okay, so the walls are still standing, the school is still doing well, you don't have a physical prospectus, and everybody's got a full set of teeth.
Yeah.
Who knew?
well, quite. I mean, what I would say, we have 400 prospectuses left, printed prospectuses left in store, and if anybody asks for one, they can have one. We will go, we use QR codes. There will be, we will produce one little printed kind of, A4 something, which will have some information on it, like a snapshot, an infographic that is not available in any other format. So people look at it and go, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
They can't get it anywhere else. You don't want to repeat but really to track, to push them along the journey, all of those things, they've got to be on the website.
So you're tracking it constantly as you go through there, where the demographics, the profile.
Yeah.
So it gives you information you never would have dared to dream about.
I mean, you've got GDPR, you've got cookies, nightmare, good, but we are actually about to go, we're in the process of kind of doing a website refresh. And that's top of our list is, ease of navigation. How easy can we make it for parents to find what they want? But secondly, as far as our team is concerned, how can we evaluate what they're doing when they're there without breaching anything, because that's the thing.
And knowledge is power, right, in this case.
Yeah, I think it is, because otherwise, it's just opinion, and we're not. There was a time when I was a parent doing that, so my experience was relevant, but now I'm not. And going back and saying this is how it used to happen, well, it's not, because I'm looking at people who are 30 and 40.
Yeah, I'm sort of indulging myself here, because I'm fascinated by a lot of the things you've got to say. But one area that I really want to just go out of all the other questions I've got ready for you, which we're not going to get around to, customer journey. Everybody talks about the blooming customer journey, and what is it? That's a big deal, right? How's that with you? What do you think? What do you think it even is? Where does it start and stop for you?
Well, in the broad sense, I think it's applying rigor to the process by which prospects become customers. And I make no apology for the sales talk, because that's what they are. And therefore, in order to do that, you have to track in whatever way works for you and for your school and for the size of your school and for the complexity or simplicity of your process. You have to track each movement along that funnel. So, transitions from inquiry to visit. I'm not counting the prospectus, because inquiry to visit, to exam entry, to offer, to accepting the offer, and nowadays to actually turning up.
Yes.
Because, I remember not that long ago, but the first time I became aware of parents being happy to forego the term's fees that they had paid. It's not huge numbers, but it was there as a thing, in order to say, actually, we've changed our mind.
Yeah.
Now, that's always in the back of my mind, because really, until they walk through the door, and then there's retention, which is a separate thing, but until they walk through the door, they're not here. They're not a customer. It's like, it's like selling the Aston Martin, until it's delivered to the door and the guy gets out and hands you the key, you're not a customer.
Yeah. Customer sales. I am loving this. Okay, so we've run out of time. We actually have run out of time. Who'd have thought that? So listen, now before you go, I'm trying to do this sort of quick fire round, really, just so we can see the sort of the human behind the title and all the rest of it. A couple of things. So who was your hero?
Jermaine Greer.
Jermaine Greer. Okay. If you could live so somebody lives in the Cotswolds. If you could live anywhere?
Oh, by the sea.
Okay. Biggest fear?
Biggest fear, heights.
Okay.
I mean, and I don't mean ladders. I mean, like, sticking on the side of the mountain.
Okay.
I have a husband who was a climber, so I speak from experience.
I tell you what, beach or snow?
Beach.
I want to hear this one. Your karaoke song, please.
Let's Stick Together by Roxy Music.
Loving it. Do you have a nickname?
I was given a nickname by my graduate trainees at Y&R, and I was called Ming the Merciless. And I'm so much nicer than that.
It all makes so much sense.
But then maybe I wasn't.
No, well, you were cutting your teeth. That's what it was. If you went back in time, where would you go?
Well, I think the problem is historically, life for women in the past was largely rubbish. So, I wouldn't want to do it. But if I was forced, it would be the 60s, when the world began to open up, for women and for teenagers and for everybody. And the music was great. And there were demonstrations and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah,
I'm with you on that one.
Great. Maybe an age thing.
What is the one thing you will never do again?
I will never do the Royal Marines water tunnel, which I had to do when I was the account director on the Royal Marines and Royal Navy recruitment. And to show willing, you know, when you say, oh, yes, we'll test the product, which is fine when you're baked beans or pizzas or whatever. But when I went down to Lympstone and they said, we'd just like you to give you a bit of a flavour. And I looked at the Tarzan ropes and I went, no, height's not good. And they said, well, you can do this. And I mean, you know, you can look at it on YouTube, you can see what it is. You know, you jump into this tunnel full of filthy, muddy water, and a big bruiser of a commando gets hold of the back of your hair and goes, take a deep breath. He shoves you down under the water, and there's nothing, your head is hitting the top of the tunnel, so there's no air. And he pushes you really hard, and you kind of go. And then at the other end, luckily, there's a guy who drags you out, and you just come out looking like a drowned rat. I've done it once, and I will never do it again.
Sounds like you should have done some quantitative research on that before you got anywhere near it, if you ask me. Well, listen, I've enjoyed that enormously, and I hope everybody has enjoyed some of those really quite wise words. A lot of sense coming out of this young lady's mouth. I tell you, she's very successful at what she does. So take heed, and I hope that has been helpful. So thank you, Dragana Hartley, Cheltenham Ladies College.
Thank you, Dominic Moon.
That's it. That's it for this week, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm going to drop my mic. Moon is out.
Take care, everyone. Bye.